Por tanto, hermanas y hermanos míos, les ruego por la misericordia de Dios que se presenten ustedes mismos como ofrenda viva, santa y agradable a Dios. Este es el verdadero culto que deben ofrecer. Sisters and brothers, I beg you through the mercy of God to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. In the name of the living God. Amen. Please be seated. Whoever saves one life saves the world entire. At the end of the movie Schindler's List, Oskar Schindler's accountant, Itzhak Stern, gives Schindler a ring with that verse from the Talmud inscribed in Hebrew on it as a huge crowd of Jewish workers that Schindler rescued from going to Auschwitz look on. Whoever saves one life saves the world entire. Only this moment of gratitude is for Schindler a moment of devastating grief. Despite the wisdom of the Talmud, despite the faces that he saved gazing on him, he can only see those he did not save. I could have got more out. I could have got more. I don't know if I could have got more. Stern pleads with him, Oskar, there are 1,100 people who are alive because of you. Look at them. But Schindler will not be comforted. If I'd made more money, I threw away so much money, you have no idea. If I'd just, Stern interrupts, there will be generations because of what you did. I didn't do enough. You did so much. This car, why did I keep this car? 10 people right there, 10 people, 10 more people. This pin, 2 people. This is gold. 2 more people. He would have given me 2 for it. At least one more person. A person, Stern, for this. He begins to collapse in sobs. I could have gotten 1 more person, and I didn't. And I didn't. And all the survivors embrace him, and he keeps on crying. The evil in this world seems so overwhelming. There are so many whose lives are in danger, so many who are suffering, so much evil to resist, and so many battles to fight. And no matter how much we do, it seems like there is always more. More evil to resist. More suffering to alleviate, more wrongs to right, more injustice to dismantle, more hatred to meet with love. We can accomplish great things, amazing things, things that save lives, and as much as the Talmud speaks truth, as much as a single life is worth the world entire, the world entire still has not been saved. And no matter how much we try or do or how many people we save, at the end of a day, a year, a life, we so often still have Oskar Schindler's words on our lips. I could have gotten 1 more person, and I didn't. And I didn't. And we collapse in exhaustion and in tears. And of course, both Stern and Schindler were right. More than 1,100 people were saved. There are entire generations because of what he did. And he could have done more. That's the truth of life. There is always more that can be done. We could have always helped. We could have always saved one more. It is at once a truth that leads us into hope. We can always save one more. And it is a truth that leads us into despair. No matter how much we do, we could always have saved one more. This morning we hear an excerpt from Paul's letter to the infant church in Rome. And one of the struggles these first followers of Jesus were having was, how are we justified? How are we right in the eyes of God? Is it through works or is it through faith? Are we justified by doing good deeds if we just resist enough evil, right enough wrong, save enough people? Paul knows both the truth of Stern and the truth of Schindler. Paul knew the truth of the Talmud. Whoever saves one life saves the world entire. And he also knew that no matter how many lives you saved, no matter how much good you did, there was still more. There would always be more. More that you could have done, more that could have been saved. After all, Jesus, God in flesh, had given his life to state execution on the cross, and still there was death. Still there was oppression. Still there was suffering. And so Paul writes to the church in Rome, and he doesn't say, do more. And he doesn't say, try harder. But neither does he say, do nothing, or why bother? Paul says, por tanto, hermanas y hermanos míos, les ruego por la misericordia de Dios que se presenten ustedes mismos como ofrenda viva, santa y agradable a Dios. Este es el verdadero culto que deben ofrecer. Sisters and brothers, I beg you through the mercy of God to offer your body as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Now, if this sounds familiar, it's because Paul's words are what I use to invite us to the Eucharist each Sunday. It is an invitation to offer our entire selves to God on this table with Christ, trusting that God will take all of us and Christ and transform us into something extraordinary, something that we will then become as we receive it and be sent out into the world to love and serve the Christ we meet there, to live in the world generously, boldly, and with great love. It is an extraordinary invitation, and yet it is so much more even than that. Paul's words are also an extraordinary affirmation that cuts right to the heart of this question of faith and works, of how much is enough, of how do we follow Jesus in this crazy world. Paul reminds us that as an offering to God, we are holy and we are enough. Let those words rest on your heart for a moment, because I think we are not used to thinking of ourselves that way. We are holy. We are enough. In fact, church, let's just say that. Say it with me. I am holy.
I am holy.
I am enough. Now turn to a neighbor. Turn to a neighbor right now. Look in their eyes. Come on. And say, you are holy. You are enough. Now stand up if you can. If you can, stand up. And let's say it together. If you can't stand up, that's fine. But stand up as you're able and let's say it together. We are holy.
We are holy.
We are enough. We are holy.
We are holy.
We are enough.
We are enough.
We are holy.
We are holy.
We are enough.
We are enough.
Okay, you can sit down. Yeah. We are holy and we are enough. Trusting that is the beginning of the answer to this eternal struggle. We are holy. We are enough. And Paul says to take ourselves holy and enough, and not to fix everything, not to save every life, not to dismantle every evil, but to take ourselves holy and enough and offer ourselves to God. That is what true worship is, Paul says. That is what it means to follow Jesus. That is what it means to be justified and right in the eyes of God. It's not doing enough good deeds, and it's not mouthing some creedal statement of belief. It is trusting that we are holy and that we are enough, and then taking our whole selves holy and enough, and not doing with them what the world says to do, not conforming ourselves to this age, but giving ourselves to God. Letting God transform us by the renewal of our minds so that we can discern what God's will is, what is good, pleasing, and perfect. And then letting God use us generously, boldly, and with great love, knowing that we are holy, knowing that we are enough. We are holy. We are enough. We can give ourselves to God so that God can use us generously, boldly, and lovingly. And by the way, this isn't just something that Paul thought up in the shower, or even something that is distinctly and uniquely Christian. The divine woos the people of Israel through Torah, longing for them to believe that they are holy and enough, and to give themselves to God so that she might use them generously, lovingly, and boldly. The very word Islam means surrender to God so that God might bring salam, so that God might bring peace. Paul and Jesus are just adding to the chorus. This is wisdom that God has revealed and is revealing throughout history in many times, places, and forms, and we need to hear it today. Because we look around, and it's just too much. People we love have cancer. Children in our community don't even have the basic supplies they need for school. Our sisters and brothers are being snatched off the street by ICE. North Korea is firing off missiles. A hurricane is battering Houston, and mudslides are killing hundreds in Sierra Leone. Our president is using a pardon literally to put the presidential seal of approval on white supremacy and police brutality, and all the while the ecological death clock of this planet is steadily ticking towards zero. And we're All Saints Church. We are people of faith in action and sacred resistance personified. It is in our DNA to be engaged in what our Jewish siblings call tikkun olam, the repair of the world. And the huge variety of ministries we have here is testimony to the breadth of our passion. And we cannot do it all. No matter how much we do, there is always more. No matter how much we know, whoever saves one life saves the world entire. Still we cry, I could have gotten one more person, and I didn't. And I didn't. And so this morning, Paul reminds us that the question we must ask when we are faced with all the evil and the sickness and all the trauma is not how do I fix it? It is not how do I fight it? But God, what does faithfulness look like? God, what would you have me? God, what would you have us do? Not how do I fix it, not how do I fight it, but saying, I am holy, I am enough. God, I give myself to you. Use me generously, boldly, and lovingly. And so, church, let's say that. I am holy, I am enough.
I am holy, I am enough.
God, I give myself to you. Use me generously, boldly, and lovingly. Now turn to a neighbor. Turn to a neighbor and look them deep in the eyes and say this like you mean it, because it's important. You are holy, you are enough. Give yourself to God. May God use you generously, boldly, and lovingly. Now get on your feet if you can. And if you can't, that's okay, but get on your feet. And we're going to say this together because it's important. We are holy, we are enough.
We are holy, we are enough.
God, we give ourselves to you.
God, we give ourselves to you.
Use us generously, boldly, and lovingly.
Use us generously, boldly, and lovingly.
Okay, you can sit down again. Giving you some aerobic exercise this morning. Okay, now here's the thing. We just said it. We all better be ready. Because as soon as we start offering ourselves to God, as soon as we start looking not to be conformed to this world, God is going to start doing some pretty funky things with us. This faithfulness may look like some pretty scary stuff. This faithfulness might look like some pretty weird stuff. Stuff that makes the rest of the world look at us and go, Remember, this is not about fitting into the world's concepts of how we should act. It's not about being conformed to the world, but about being transformed by the renewing of our minds. And that means discarding lots of conventional wisdom. Most of all, it means discarding the great lie that the world is always whispering and sometimes shouting in our ear that success or failure is up to us. Because it's truly not. What is up to us is every day to remember that we are holy and that we are enough, and to offer ourselves to God and to do it together and to ask God to use us generously, boldly, and lovingly. And so I want to invite us to do just that. When we feel that the world is getting too much and the crazy is just coming out of our ears, when we feel that there is just too much evil to resist, too much suffering to alleviate, too much injustice to fight, to stop. And to remember that, yes, it is true that whoever saves one life saves the world entire. To remember that, yes, it is true that we can always save one more. But most of all, to remember that it is true that we are holy. It is true that we are enough. And that what God longs from us is not success, but faithfulness. Simply to give ourselves to God. To ask God, what would you have me? What would you have us do? And pray that God might use me, God might use you, that God might use us generously, boldly, and lovingly. Amen.